Just over 3 decades ago, the South Korean company was often the subject of harsh criticism in the automotive world. Its cars were seen as uninspired copies, rushed together, lacking character or prestige. Today, the picture is very different. Hyundai has surpassed titans like Ford, General Motors, and the Renault-Nissan-Mitsubishi alliance in global sales. In 2024 alone, the brand sold over 4 million vehicles, earning a place on the global podium, only behind Toyota and the Volkswagen Group. This present, worthy of admiration, becomes even more impressive when you consider how young the company is. Hyundai has just over 5 decades of history, a brief, almost insulting span compared to rival brands that boast centuries of tradition. But within that short timeline lies an unstoppable momentum, one that was embodied by its founder, Chung Ju-Yung, a poor farmer who grew up under foreign military occupation, a man who, in his own words, worked 15 to 16 hours a day in the fields and still struggled to put food on the table. From that harsh reality, he built Hyundai and expanded it into a massive conglomerate, turning it into a symbol of South Korea's economic miracle, a country that, for decades, knew more of war and poverty than of highways and engines. Today, we travel back to the early 20th century to explore the origin, rise, and legacy of Hyundai, alongside the extraordinary journey of Chung Ju-Yung, a visionary who didn't just build a company, he helped reshape a nation. It's fascinating to imagine that the foundations of one of the most influential companies in the modern globalized world were laid in what is now the territory of communist North Korea. Because yes, the story of Hyundai began there. On November 25, 1915, its founder Chung Ju-Yung was born in Asan-ri, a small farming village in Gangwon Province, within a country impoverished and under foreign occupation. Since 1910, the former Korean kingdom had been under the control of the Japanese Empire, which imposed a colonial system designed to extract resources, exploit the local population, and erase all traces of Korean cultural identity. Chung grew up in that harsh reality. As the eldest of a large family, he began working in the rice fields at the age of 6, according to him, working endless 15 to 16-hour days under the scorching sun. To that exhausting routine, one had to add constant humiliation. Koreans were forced to learn Japanese, adopt Japanese names, and surrender a large portion of their crops as tribute to the empire. There were no rights, no opportunities, only obedience. Yet, within Chung, there was always a deep conviction to change his fate. Whenever work allowed it, he would sneak away to attend a small rural school run by his grandfather. There, he learned the basics: how to read, write, and dream. For a time, he even aspired to become a teacher. But poverty doesn't negotiate with dreams. At age 14, he had to abandon school entirely and devote himself to working the land. It wasn't an act of resignation, but the beginning of a personal, patient rebellion, fueled by hunger for a different future. At 16, he attempted his first escape. He walked 24 kilometers, about 15 miles, to the port city of Chongjin, hoping to find work. He got a job on a construction site under grueling and poorly paid conditions. The experience didn't last. 2 months later, his father found him and forced him to return home. But the desire for independence had already taken root. In 1932, he tried again, this time heading to Seoul for a job offer that turned out to be a scam. He survived on charity, asking for shelter wherever he could, until once again his father found him and brought him back. Anyone else would have given up, but not him. In a bold third attempt, he sold one of the family's cows without permission and bought a train ticket to Seoul. This time, the escape worked. He managed to settle in the capital city where he found a job as an assistant in a rice shop. It wasn't much, but to him, it was freedom. There, his real business education began. He observed every detail: customer service, inventory management, accounting, the supply chain. He absorbed everything. He worked harder than anyone, but he learned more than all of them. Chung Ju-Yung had taken his first real step. He had escaped the fields, the poverty, and the fate imposed on him. And without knowing it, he had begun the long journey that would one day make him the face of his country's industrial rebirth. Fate, in its unpredictable way, intervened. The owner of the rice shop where Chung Ju-Yung worked fell gravely ill. Impressed by Chung's dedication and talent, he entrusted the young man with full control of the business. The same boy who had once worked 16 hours under the burning sun now found himself running a modest but meaningful enterprise. For someone who had started from absolutely nothing, this was his first major triumph. A stable income, the ability to support his family back in Aesunri by sending money home, and the security of having escaped extreme poverty. But prosperity would be short-lived. By the late 1930s, the Japanese Empire, under pressure to sustain its military ambitions, tightened its domestic policies. Food rationing, especially of rice and grains, became law, and that law ultimately doomed Chung's business. At just 25 years old, he saw his primary source of income vanish. It wasn't his first business failure, but it was one of the most painful. Determined not to give up, in 1940 he partnered with a Japanese associate to launch A-Do Service, a freight transport company that served construction projects and small factories. It was a smart and timely idea. Industrialization was accelerating under Japanese rule. But once again, his efforts were stifled by colonial control. A-Do Service was seized and absorbed into the war effort. Chung was left in financial ruin again. Unyielding in his determination, he launched a small automobile repair shop in 1943, calling it Kyongo Garage, his first direct contact with the automotive world. In less than 3 years, the workshop employed up to 70 people. But even this venture was disrupted. The business was forced to merge with a steel plant. Then came 1945. Japan was defeated, and with its fall, more than 3 decades of colonial rule over Korea came to an end. But freedom did not bring unity. The Allied powers, rushed by geopolitical interests, divided the peninsula in two: the North under Soviet influence, the South under American supervision. A division meant to be temporary became a deep and lasting wound, and the prelude to a brutal war between two brother nations. Chung Ju-Yung settled in Seoul, within the emerging capitalist system of the South. There, he noticed that American military vehicles were flooding the market, but the city lacked reliable mechanical services. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. Just 1 year later, in 1946, he relaunched his workshop, this time under the name Hyundai Motor Service. He chose the name Hyundai because in Korean it means modernity, a reflection of his vision for a rebuilt, forward-looking Korea. The workshop's success allowed him to dream even bigger. In 1947, he founded Hyundai Engineering and Construction, formally entering the construction industry. In the decades to come, this division would become a cornerstone of South Korea's economic miracle. Hyundai's rise during the 1950s was abruptly interrupted by yet another blow from fate: the outbreak of the Korean War. A brutal conflict that once again plunged the country into ruin, paralyzing its already fragile economy. But this time, Chung Ju-Yung would not allow war to derail his business vision. Hardened by adversity, he managed to keep his company afloat by securing contracts with Allied forces, taking on key projects, roads, bridges, and other critical infrastructure for military logistics. Hyundai's efficiency elevated its reputation, making it a central player in South Korea's national reconstruction after the 1953 armistice that ended the war. The country needed builders, and Hyundai had already become synonymous with building. By the 1960s, South Korea began to look toward the future. The government embraced an export-oriented economy and encouraged large family-run conglomerates, known as chaebols, to diversify. The message was clear: industrialize or vanish. Chung's company was ready for the next step. His early experience with automotive repair in the 1940s had left him with a firm conviction. A car was not just a machine. It was a symbol of development, of modernity, and of national sovereignty. At the time, South Korea's automotive landscape was virtually non-existent. The market was dominated by foreign brands, and domestic production was zero. Chung saw in that void a golden opportunity. In 1967, he founded Hyundai Motor Company, with a goal as ambitious as it was clear: to build the first Korean car, with Korean capital and Korean hands. The early days were tough. Lacking expertise, technology, and infrastructure, Hyundai sought a partnership with the American giant Ford Motor Company. They began assembling Ford models for the Korean market, while their engineers absorbed every detail of automotive design and production. Just a year later, in 1968, Hyundai's brand-new Ulsan plant, today the largest car factory in the world, rolled out its first model, the Ford Cortina. A functional and affordable sedan, it became the first vehicle assembled in South Korea. It marked the dawn of a new era. By the end of the decade, Hyundai had officially become a diversified conglomerate with a footprint in key industries. But Chung didn't believe in limits. He often said, "A company is not strong because of what it sells at home, but because of what it can sell to the world." With that mindset, in 1972 he founded Hyundai Heavy Industries, building a colossal shipyard in Ulsan. What seemed like a dream is now the largest shipyard on Earth, holding nearly 15% of the global market. It was clear: the young farm boy who once sold a cow to buy a train ticket was now building the industrial backbone of an entire nation. But his masterstroke was still to come. In 1974, Chung hired George Turnbull, former managing director of Austin Morris in the UK, to lead the development of South Korea's first car. Turnbull brought 5 British engineers and led the project that would make history, the Hyundai Pony. Unveiled in 1975, the Pony was the first mass-produced car in South Korea. Designed by the Italian studio Giugiaro and equipped with Mitsubishi technology, it became the launchpad for Korea's homegrown automotive industry. That modest vehicle sent a clear message to the world: Hyundai was ready to play in the big leagues. It was an overwhelming success. In less than 5 years, the Pony became one of South Korea's best-selling cars, earning the nickname the People's Car, a powerful reference that echoed the iconic Volkswagen Beetle of the 1930s. Its low-cost and accessible design made it the ideal vehicle for a nation just beginning to find its footing. Domestic success soon translated into global ambition. Just a year after its launch, in 1976, Hyundai began exporting units to emerging markets like Ecuador and several Latin American countries, as well as key regions in Africa and the Middle East. At the same time, the Pony found its way into markets like Belgium, Greece, and the Netherlands, thanks to its attractive pricing. The same happened in Canada, where the model's second generation, launched in 1982, was widely popular. But not everything was cause for celebration. The model's success also brought its first wave of criticism. Hyundai's lack of experience in mass production resulted in assembly flaws, and the use of low durability materials led to issues in harsh climates and rugged terrains. As a result, the Pony started to gain a reputation as a fragile car in some markets. Despite these warning signs, the dream of conquering the United States could not be postponed. Still, under Chung Ju-Young's tireless leadership, Hyundai used the Pony's platform to develop a new model, the XL, launched in 1986. It was designed as an affordable, functional, and stylish option for families. In its first year, the XL surpassed all expectations. It sold over 100,000 units and set a record for a foreign brand. It was a triumphant debut, a symbol of the American dream achieved by an emerging Asian automaker. However, strong sales didn't translate into a good reputation. The XL amplified the problems already seen with the Pony: severe engine and transmission failures, along with criticism for poor interior finishes. This time, the negative perception reached a global scale. Hyundai was labeled a brand of cheap but unreliable cars. Chung knew that changing that image would be a long and uphill battle. The company responded with an aggressive reinvestment strategy. It poured millions into establishing R&D centers in the United States, Germany, and Japan. Every aspect of production was reviewed, and quality standards were raised across the board. One of the most effective moves came in the form of extended warranties, 10 years or 100,000 miles. It was a bold promise that no other brand offered at the time and helped restore much of the consumer trust. At the same time, Hyundai expanded its lineup. Beyond the Sonata, introduced in 1985, Hyundai launched the Elantra in 1990, a compact sedan built to compete in the highly contested C-segment dominated by the Japanese. Later, in 1994, the Accent was introduced as a direct evolution of the Excel, with significant improvements in design, aerodynamics, and overall quality. The company slowly regained ground. But in 1997, a new storm hit Asia. The regional financial crisis threatened the survival of countless companies. It was a brutal time for domestic consumption, but also a window of opportunity. While giants like Daewoo collapsed, Hyundai moved quickly to acquire its biggest competitor, Kia Motors, which was on the brink of bankruptcy. That strategic move, at the close of the century, positioned Hyundai as the single dominant force in South Korea's auto industry. It expanded its model portfolio, solidified its global presence, and made it clear that the new century would welcome Hyundai not as a promise, but as a rising power. The new millennium began with momentum. Hyundai unveiled the Santa Fe, its first SUV aimed directly at the demanding U.S. market. Named after a city in Los Angeles County, it was a clear statement of the brand's global ambitions. But that promising start was soon overshadowed by deeply emotional news: the death of Chung Ju-Yung, the founding father of the Hyundai empire, on March 21, 2001, at the age of 85. Over 2,000 people gathered in Seoul to pay tribute to the man who helped reshape a nation through sheer vision and determination. Chung left behind a tangible legacy: 11 heirs, a diversified and robust corporate structure, and a living symbol of Korea's rebirth. Since stepping down in 1992, the Korean magnate had even ventured into politics, running for president under the National Unification Party. And in 1998, at the age of 82, he led a symbolic caravan of 1,000 cows across the Korean demilitarized zone, calling for reconciliation between the two Koreas. After his passing, Hyundai began a new chapter under the leadership of his successors. In 2007, the brand introduced the I-Series, led by compact models like the i10, i20, and i30, designed specifically to conquer European and emerging markets. In 2011 came the WheelStory, a sporty asymmetric coupe inspired by rally racing, an evolution of Hyundai's rally debut in the WRC back in 1998. Then, in 2015, Genesis emerged as a standalone luxury brand, created to rival premium competitors like Audi and Lexus. Over the past decade, Hyundai has positioned itself at the forefront of green innovation. In 2020, it launched the Xcient fuel cell, the world's first mass-produced hydrogen-powered truck, alongside the Elex City FCV, a bus with a range of 270 miles, now operating in Switzerland and Saudi Arabia. Another milestone was the Nexo SUV, released in 2018, offering 414 miles of range and a 5-minute refuel time. Although 2024 brought controversy, Hyundai was forced to recall the Nexo due to potential safety concerns. The company remains committed to its vision. The Initium concept, a futuristic hydrogen-electric SUV, is living proof of that ambition. In fact, 2024 marked two critical milestones. First, the company inaugurated a state-of-the-art EV manufacturing plant in Georgia, USA, backed by a $7.6 billion investment. Second, it reached a historic production figure: 100 million vehicles built since its founding. Today, Hyundai's automotive division is no longer just a part of the conglomerate. It's its backbone. It accounts for nearly half of the company's total revenue, employs more than 120,000 people, and operates across more than 190 countries, from the Americas to the Middle East, from Europe to Southeast Asia. With a market capitalization of $45 billion, Hyundai is no longer fighting to reach the podium. It's already standing on it. What began as an emerging underdog is now a global titan of the automotive industry. Because beyond the numbers, the global reach, and the futuristic models, Hyundai continues to embody its founder's vision, a driving force of modernity, resilience, and constant reinvention. And that concludes the inspiring story of Hyundai, an industrial giant, surprisingly young, that in just a few decades grew from an unknown auto repair shop into a living symbol of South Korea's economic miracle. If you're a loyal Hyundai driver, or simply passionate about the world of cars, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story captured your attention, you might want to discover how a company born in the age of the samurai became one of Japan's largest industrial conglomerates, Kawasaki. See you in the next video.